Tonight, hundreds of thousands still without power as ex-tropical cyclone Alfred triggers flash flooding across the east coast. Hello, I'm Isabel Dayman, live from Adelaide. This is ABC News. Also tonight, WA Labor secures a third term in government after another firm defeat of the Liberal Party. 25 killed in the latest strikes on Ukraine as a frayed relationship with the US takes its toll. And state political reporter Sophie Holder sits down with Quarter Mentha to get the latest on the Wireless Steelworks administration. Ex-tropical cyclone Alfred has lashed southeast Queensland for a second night, with many residents saying they were caught by surprise. Massive rainfalls are causing flash flooding and triggering emergency warnings for inundation. These pictures are from Hervey Bay, north of the Sunshine Coast, which received 300 millimetres of rain today. In Brisbane and the Gold Coast, many had hoped they'd missed the worst of the storm, but 100 km/h winds overnight toppled more trees and electrical lines. As we go to air, hundreds of thousands of households are still without power. Schools that are safe to reopen tomorrow will do so, but there's no blanket decision. We have reporters across the East Coast, but we begin tonight's coverage with Kate McKenna in Brisbane.
Taken off guard, Fraser Coast residents were not expecting this. Locals thought they were outside the firing line. The ferocity of the downpour a surprise.
It was all pretty calm, but we were just watching out for everything with all the news reports, and then all of a sudden, bang, it came out of nowhere, mate.
We were expecting a little bit of rain, but not this much and not this quick.
More than 300 millimetres pelted down, prompting an emergency alert. This woman had to be rescued as floodwaters suddenly rose. She was one of dozens across the region who needed to be evacuated. The raging torrent threatened caravan parks.
We are actually in some trouble.
Whole streets were quickly engulfed and businesses inundated. Workers at Tom O'Neill's shop spent the morning mopping up.
So I looked at the rest of the cameras and then seen everything floating inside and went, oh, this isn't good.
Further south, a second bone-rattling night. The tropical low again pummelling the southeast. North of Brisbane, these Clontarf residents had the fright of their lives, a tree crashing onto their home.
We're in the hallway and heard a loud thud and just had to stay there till we saw it this morning.
They'd spent the evening before sheltering elsewhere, not expecting last night to be worse.
Because the weather looked good yesterday, we moved everything back in the house and ended up, getting caught out.
There is no doubt that it continues to pack a punch.
Gusts of more than 100 km/h were clocked.
Yeah, it was blowing a gale.
Then pounding rain.
How you doing? All good?
So we're just watching the creek at the back now. It's sort of broken its banks, but we're on sort of going low tide at the moment, so fingers crossed. Across Brisbane, waterways overflowed. Low-lying streets and the cars left there swamped. A spectacle for some.
Right in front of our eyes. It's just going so fast.
Wet roads without traffic lights made driving dangerous. This Brisbane resident says he bought his house knowing it could flood underneath.
We just took a chance. You just got to take a chance sometimes, you know.
Authorities are warning everyone to stay on guard in the short term.
The heavy rainfall will continue and flash flooding is a high risk.
We've not had any loss of life from this weather event, and I'd be really keen to keep it that way.
But the system is expected to ease in coming days.
We have no plans to open the Wivenhoe and Somerset gates at the moment with the rainfall that we can see on the ground at the moment.
Hundreds of thousands remain without power or telecommunications. On the Gold Coast, some have been in the dark for days.
You know, we're on candles, we're on gas, we've been able to cook. Kids have been doing a lot of painting activities, and we're just trying to be back how we used to be when we were young, without a bit of technology.
Exhausted residents dealing with this disaster for days are being urged to stay vigilant. With the beginning of a new week, some people will be returning to work, with services, schools and businesses up and running where possible. A return to normal life, hopefully not too far off. Kate McKenna, ABC News, Brisbane.
12 members of the Defence Force remain in New South Wales hospitals tonight after 2 military vehicles rolled. The soldiers had been in Lismore helping communities affected by ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. Police are now investigating what led to the incident.
On a tough day for some of their military mates, men and women in uniform file into Lismore Base Hospital, where members of their team were taken after a major crash.
In my 32 years of policing, it's the largest accident scene that I've been to.
32 soldiers were travelling in 2 army trucks along a road in Tregeagle, outside Lismore, when both of the vehicles rolled.
It was a very hectic scene when we arrived. We had patients of varying injuries up and down the roadway, and certainly still had 4 persons trapped.
All on board were taken to hospital and a mass emergency was declared. The troops from Queensland's 7th Brigade were in the Northern Rivers helping communities clear up after ex-tropical cyclone Alfred.
This team of 32 had been engaged in route clearance work and were in transit from one task to another when the incident occurred.
These men and women are heroes who are on their way to help people in need. They were doing this at a time when some of their own families were bearing the brunt of Alfred.
The New South Wales Premier wants to make sure the support keeps coming.
I don't want it to dampen the community's need, the state's need, the public's need for help every now and then.
This afternoon, a fresh round of help arrived in Lismore as more soldiers from Queensland were given a tour by police, with conditions still treacherous in parts of the town. Visiting paramedics have also been playing a crucial role in northern New South Wales, plucking patients from flood zones with their world-first fleet of ambulances designed to tackle rivers.
Our Hara vehicle is able to operate safely in a floodwater depth of 1.2 metres, and there have been multiple crossings at that depth through this deployment.
The Prime Minister has praised the efforts of those involved in helping flood-affected communities. Anthony Albanese and the Defence Minister Richard Marles today visited troops in Queensland. It's also expected they'll come here to northern New South Wales in the days ahead. Fiona Willan, ABC News, Lismore.
Let's get the latest now from Brisbane and northern New South Wales. First to Will Murray in Brisbane. Will, it's still not over yet. What's the situation where you are?
A good evening, Isabel. We have been waiting for some time for the severe weather to hit Brisbane CBD, and it's certainly here now. Yesterday we had over 100 millimetres of rain in the CBD gauge, and today we've had well over that again, and it's still raining heavily behind me. It has been raining pretty solidly for the past 24 hours. Now, in some low-lying parts of the city, suburbs like Nunda, Stones Corner, East Brisbane, Carindale and Oxley, we've already seen some quite decent flooding, although thankfully to this point it hasn't reached the levels of previous flood events. But as I say, it is very much still raining. Now, unfortunately, a severe weather system is heading towards Logan and the Gold Coast as we speak, so we encourage people to stay safe there. Now, around 1,000 call-outs for the SES have been made today, mostly for building damage and for fallen trees. And we understand nearly 1,000 extra emergency services personnel will be deployed to the region. Now, looking ahead, it seems this heavy rain will ease tonight, although we might be in for another burst around 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. But that is not expected to last. And so hopefully crews can get on with the job of restoring power to the hundreds of thousands of homes across southeast Queensland that have lost it in the past couple of days, and hopefully any clean-up that is necessary can begin. But this is still a very anxious time for a lot of Queenslanders, because while it is still raining, the rivers and the creeks are still rising.
Thanks, Will, and let's bring in reporter Ethan Ricks, who's in Grafton in northern New South Wales. Ethan, what's happening where you are?
Well, Isabel, the flow-on effect of ex-tropical cyclone Alfred is now starting to be felt in some of these low-lying parts of the state, where authorities have now shifted their attention. The Clarence River here in Grafton has risen dramatically over the last 24 hours, from below 2 metres yesterday to above 5.5 metres today. That makes this a major flooding event in Grafton, and the Bureau of Meteorology is forecasting that that will continue to rise into into the evening, and certainly the swollen river here in Grafton has attracted a lot of attention from the locals.
We'll just watch and act as we hear the warnings, but as far as I'm aware, the warnings are saying that it's not going to go over the levee, so it should be all right.
I'm not from here. I've only been here for a year, and this is the first time. It's unbelievable.
Pretty bad. I reckon it's one of the worst ones. But yeah, like we've still got heaps more rain coming.
This area is subject to a number of emergency warnings, and to make people aware of that, the SES has knocked on more than 400 doors in the area today. Isabel?
Thanks, Ethan. Ethan Ricks reporting there. As heavy rains continue to soak the east coast, ABC meteorologist Tom Saunders explains how Alfred is becoming one of the most memorable cyclones in Australia's history.
A 17-day journey is finally over. Tropical cyclone Alfred sprung to life in the northern Coral Sea on February the 23rd. The system peaked as a Category 4 storm on a long and winding path south. And Alfred's final approach to the coast was also far from straightforward. A twist and a dance before landfall just 60 kilometres north of Brisbane CBD. But Alfred's influence has been far-reaching. Over the past week, hundreds of millimetres extending down the coast to Taree, including by 9 a.m. Sunday, 858 millimetres at Dorrigo, 848 at Upper Springbrook and 712 millimetres at Meldrum. But now that the system is inland, it's sucking moisture over land. Hervey Bay was smashed by a violent storm early this morning, the region's heaviest rain in 70 years. And Brisbane today was under relentless rain. The city's recorded 200 millimetres, which is 2 months' worth of rain in the past 24 hours. And it's not over yet. Another wild night of torrential rain is ahead for southeast Queensland. Modelling predicts hundreds of millimetres by the morning, and that's enough for severe flooding. And there's the possibility early Monday of heavy rain returning to the northern rivers. Later tomorrow, that rain should finally ease near the coast as the last remnants of Alfred slip south over the border, a direction which should bring heavy falls and possible flooding to the northern inland of New South Wales. That's before Alfred's rainfall finally eases completely during the middle of the week.
South Australia's Public Service Union says there have been 3 separate assaults involving weapons at Yatala Labor Prison over the past week. The latest assault allegedly happened this morning and resulted in the injured victim being treated by medical staff. The Department for Correctional Services says it reported the incident to SA Police and denies it's a reflection of inadequate resourcing. Correctional Services Minister Emily Burke says the department's stepping up efforts to detect and deter offending in prisons. But the Public Service Association, which represents correctional officers, claims there's been a recent increase in violent incidents.
Staff are very concerned about their own safety, but they're also very concerned about the safety of prisoners as a result of the increasing level of assaults, which have increased by 2.5 times since 2019.
Western Australia's Labor Party has recorded yet another thumping election victory. An 18% swing against the party did little to diminish its huge parliamentary majority, with the WA Liberals left soul-searching after a 3rd consecutive electoral loss. Stepping out of Mark McGowan's shadow and into Labor's 3rd term, one the Premier says will be defined by local manufacturing.
Western Australia has voted for a future which is made in WA.
After a history-making landslide in 2021, the party was bracing for a loss of at least 12 seats, but so far has lost just 4. Despite an 18% swing against Labor, it was not a good night for the Liberals.
It's been a dramatic result for the Labor Party in Perth. They're doing much better than expected.
Liberal leader Libby Mettam leaving the door open for a change of leadership.
And it is important that whoever the leader is going forward is the leader going into the 2029 election.
Prominent media personality Basil Zemplis will be in the mix after a closer-than-expected win in the seat of Churchlands.
The continual rebuild of the Liberal Party now takes its next step, with more numbers, more talent.
With another election imminent, both federal leaders are watching WA closely.
To put it in context, this is the 2nd largest victory in history in Western Australia. That is quite remarkable for a government seeking a third term in office.
Well, look, it's a mixed result in WA. In a seat like Collie, where we've announced the nuclear reactor, there was a 20% swing to the Liberals in that seat.
A key takeout from the WA result is that both major parties continue to bleed votes to independents and minor parties, a trend both federal leaders will need to address in the coming weeks. Rhiannon Shine, ABC News.
Ukraine has come under renewed attack from Russia after the US cut off military intelligence to the country. The latest strikes have killed 25 people and wounded dozens more. It comes as President Zelensky is set to continue talks with the United States on ending the war.
Russian missiles strike the Ukrainian town of Dobropilya, killing 11. The attack coming just 24 hours after Ukrainian energy plants were hit by dozens of missiles and drones.
The second strike occurred when the rescuers were on site. 50 people were wounded. The youngest is a 10-year-old girl.
It's the latest in a wave of fresh strikes from Moscow after the US stopped sharing military intelligence with Zelensky's forces. Blind without the Americans, Ukraine is struggling to defend itself.
Literally every day, Russia proves with its cruelty that nothing has changed for them in Moscow.
In Kyiv, dozens gathered near the US embassy protesting Donald Trump's decision.
The long-term consequences will affect everyone and them equally. We Ukrainians need the support of the American people.
Tomorrow, President Zelensky will travel to Saudi Arabia to continue discussions with the Americans. Then, on Tuesday, European leaders will meet again to work out possible ways forward for peace. The Prime Minister says Australia will attend. The invitation coming after he appeared open to potentially sending Australian troops to the region.
Thanks for all your service. As I've said, there is no mission at this point in time. You can't have a peacekeeping mission without having peace. We have been invited to this meeting on Tuesday and we will participate.
But whatever the outcome, Europe and Ukraine will still need the military might of America. Michelle Rimmer, ABC News.
A $53 billion plan for the reconstruction of Gaza has been rejected by Israel and the United States. The proposal, drawn up by Egypt and backed by Arab countries, would avoid displacing Palestinians from the territory. The plan also has the support of leading European nations. Its rejection comes as negotiations continue over the future of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. More than 45,000 Palestinians are believed to have been killed in Gaza since October 7, and nearly 70% of all structures in the territory have been damaged or destroyed. More than 1,000 people have been killed in Syria in clashes between government forces and loyalists to ousted dictator Bashar al-Assad. Syria's new government is fighting an insurgency by ethnic minority Alawites who also exiled the president, who support the exiled president rather. The fighting is centred on the country's coastal region, which is Alawite heartland. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says close to 3/4 of those killed in the last 2 days are civilians, mostly shot at close range. Al-Assad was toppled in December last year after a lightning campaign by the rebel group led by HTS. The South Australian government last month pulled an extraordinary manoeuvre, passing legislation within minutes to force the wireless steelworks into administration. Since then, a $2.4 billion government support package for the city and the embattled plant has been announced, a move well received by locals after months of uncertainty. But the full extent of the former operator's debt has also been revealed, with creditors owed more than $1.3 billion. Investment firm Quartermentha has taken the steelworks reins, aiming to stabilise the plant and find a buyer. State political reporter Sophie Holder sat down with Quartermentha partner Sebastian Hams to discuss the progress of the administration process.
Sebastian Hams, thank you so much for joining us today. When you first saw the state of the steelworks, how surprised were you?
I was quite shocked. Clearly very little maintenance has been done since we were last here. There are some significant issues that we need to address. For example, the traffic lights at the opening of the steelworks weren't working. I think that's just a really good example of some really fundamental maintenance and CapEx issues that we needed to address.
Now, it's the second time in 10 years that we've seen administration here at the steelworks. Is this still a viable operation?
It's really challenging. The business has been losing a lot of money, particularly over the last 12 months. So look, there is a pathway to the future, but there's a significant number of capital expenditure items that we need to address in order to get the business on a solid footing going forward.
Is this worse than when Quartermentha took over last time in 2016 after Arium collapsed?
Right at the moment it is worse. The upside is there is some clarity on what the future looks like. We've just got to get from the stabilisation phase that we're in now and transition into that next phase, the capital expenditure phase.
And how hard do you think it will be to find a buyer?
It's going to be challenging, but that said, we're really blessed and very lucky and grateful to the state government and the federal government. The governments have collectively committed $2.4 billion, so that is going to be a material advantage to us in finding a buyer. That gives a buyer confidence that the government is behind us, and that'll be really important to us going forward.
And what sort of interest have you had so far?
Oh, look, we've had interest. I think we've had upwards of 10 interested parties, but that said, look, it's early doors. You get a lot of emails from people who perhaps might not be around at the back end of the process. We know who's interested in this. You know, there's domestic players, there's international players. This is a big piece of expenditure, so it's not going to be a fly-by-night operator. It's going to be a really established steel maker.
Is BlueScope still one of those?
I would hope BlueScope would be absolutely part of that process.
Last time staff did have to take a pay cut. Is that something that's on the cards this time?
That's not something we're entertaining at the moment.
Quartermentha were administrators in 2016 when Sanjeev Gupta's GFG Alliance was selected to take it over. In hindsight, was that a mistake?
No. We did our due diligence at that point in time. When we sold this business to Mr Gupta back in 2017, we did our due diligence. We went through that process. What has transpired in the last 9 years has happened.
And just finally, what is your message for the workers here and for Whyalla? How confident can they be moving forwards?
There's two messages I would give to both our employees and our subcontractors, both here in Whyalla, out at the mines. We're in a situation where we are only here by virtue of their work. So my first message to them is thank you. The gratitude that we can display towards you is real and should be really acknowledged across the community. The second piece is we're going through this stabilisation phase, and when I say we, it's the entire community. It's the community of Whyalla, all of our employees, the employees of the subcontractors. It's going to be a tough period, but what we have committed to everyone is we'll keep you engaged and we'll keep you informed on this journey.
Sebastian Hans, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sophie.
The WOMADelaide Festival is well underway with musical acts from all across the world entertaining audiences right here in Adelaide. Our reporter Eva Blanders has joined crowds braving the long weekend heat. Eva, what's the atmosphere like down at Botanic Park?
The atmosphere down here is absolutely electric. Now, you can just tell by the amount of people behind me just how much people love this festival that has now been in Adelaide for 34 years. Now, organisers do say that the ticket sales have not been impacted by the cost of living crisis, unlike many other festivals across the country. Organisers can't say at this point how many attendees have been here so far, but you can just tell from around me that I think they're well on the way to what they were expecting. Now, as you know, it's been extremely hot the last few days with temperatures reaching the high 30s, but that hasn't kept anyone away. There are so many activities here for everyone, young families, so many friendly family activities for them to enjoy. Now, earlier we spoke to people of all ages from all across the country about what they love about this festival and how they've been keeping cool.
Nice atmosphere, and it's just a fun thing to do, and add it to the list of Adelaide things that are fun.
What have you been doing to keep cool?
Running in the sprinklers.
And is that so fun?
I also run in the sprinklers.
I don't care really, I just want to be here at this time.
Now, tomorrow is WOMAD's last day with a top of 36 degrees expected. But from the conversations I've had with festival goers today, that's not going to keep them away from enjoying the very last moments of this festival. I mean, why wouldn't they?
Thanks, Eva. Eva Blandis reporting there. Greater Western Sydney has begun its 2025 season with a punishing 52-point win over Collingwood, but the win has come at a cost. Giants ruck Kieran Briggs was taken to hospital and Pies star Nick Dacos limped to the final siren.
After missing out on finals last year, the Pies were raring to go, though Giants Stadium was looking a little worse for wear after a Green Day concert during the week.
And we're underway.
With their key forwards in the stands, the early scoring was left to the Giants' backs.
Flirts with the goal post, but it's there.
Friendly fire saw ruckman Kieran Briggs subbed off before quarter time, and a couple of quick goals to Collingwood
Magpies needed that big time.
soon fired up the contest. The Giants' frantic forward work giving them a 23-point advantage at the main break.
But Green's there. Toby with another one.
The Magpies' hopes of turning the game around began to fade with Nick Dacos needing treatment, and the Giants capitalised.
25 metres out, check side, goal!
As Kieran Briggs watched on from his hospital bed. Tim Membry found a reason to celebrate, scoring his first goal in the black and white.
Pretty good off the boot, got it!
But the orange tsunami was too powerful, the Giants streaking away with ease.
O'Halloran to finish the job.
Captain Toby Green made sure his opponents knew they were well and truly beaten. The siren sound finally putting the Pies out of their misery. Craig McRae now with plenty of work to do before Collingwood's first home game next weekend. Erin Marsicovetere, ABC News.
A 4-wicket win over Victoria in Melbourne this afternoon has confirmed that South Australia will host this year's Sheffield Shield final. A stunning century from Jake Lehmann helped guide SA to victory. He finished on 105 not out. Liam Scott contributed 83 runs before he eventually fell to Colt hero Scott Boland. Boland struck again to put pressure on the run chase, but Lehmann's patient knock was enough to claim the victory. A successful run chase of 300 secured South Australia's hosting rights, with its opponent in the final to be determined in the final round. Let's take a look at all the weather details now, but first, tonight's photo of a monarch butterfly caterpillar, which was sent to us by Jenny Jones. It was a scorcher across Adelaide again today. In the city, the mercury rose to 36.7 degrees around 4:45 after an overnight low of 21.3. Further afield, skies were clear right across the state today, bringing hot and dry conditions. It reached 37 degrees in Woomera and 35 in Narracourt. To the charts, and cloud with remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Alfred will continue to generate showers and storms across southeast Queensland and northeastern New South Wales. Rain and thunderstorms are also expected for the tropics and inland parts of the NT and WA in moist, unstable air. A front should also bring a few showers to Tasmania. So showers, storms and 33 degrees for Darwin, persistent showers along much of the east coast and a warm and sunny top of 30 degrees for Perth. Closer to home, mostly clear and dry again for the north of the state tomorrow, with sweltering tops of 40 degrees for Lee Creek and Whyalla. Further south, the chance of a few isolated showers and thunderstorms around the agricultural area, hot and dry elsewhere, 34 degrees the top for Maitland, 39 for Keith. A severe heatwave warning remains in place for the lower southeast. Partly cloudy and very hot again for Adelaide tomorrow. A top of 36 degrees expected for Adelaide Cup Day after a warm overnight low of 25. On the waters, south to southwesterly winds to 15 knots and seas below a metre. The sun will rise at 7:10 and set around 7:45. Looking further ahead, sunny and 30 degrees on Tuesday, 31 on Thursday, up to 36 on Saturday, before dropping to 26 degrees with a shower or two expected for this time next week. That's the latest from the Adelaide newsroom. Thanks so much for your company. Have a great night.